Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live following the Timberwolves loss to the Clippers on Wednesday. Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North joins the show to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm joined by Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North. We're talking Wolves Clippers. The Timberwolves lost the Clippers by 11 on Wednesday. And Marney, the story in this game was the complete lack of offense, really, from both teams. Both teams scoring under 100. By the way, side note, the first time the Wolves have held a team under 100, I think, since last March. But, of course, the Wolves had even more issues offensively. No D'Angelo Russell. The Wolves struggled to get anything going on offense.
No D'Angelo Russell with Jordan McLaughlin already out. So that left Austin Rivers as the starting point guard. But really, Anthony Edwards sort of assumed the point guard duties a lot as the ball handler. And the Clippers were putting a second guy on him almost as soon as he crossed half court, kind of forcing the ball out of his hands. So it was just that was a challenge all night. But my goodness, the halftime score tonight was 43-38. That is just those are incredibly low numbers in today's NBA. So yeah, not a great shooting night from either team. But Wolves, that was not a pretty loss.
No, and you mentioned the Clipper strategy against Ant, and clearly the idea is, hey, there's no D'Angelo Russell, there's obviously no Karl-Anthony Towns, there's really no. I mean, the Wolves have consistently been one of the league's worst three-point shooting teams of late, and there's just no punch beyond Anthony Edwards. So the Clippers defended him exactly like you would expect them to in that scenario. So they, like you said, they basically doubled him right across when he crossed midcourt. They were doubling him at the top of the key all night long. They loaded up on him and dared the Timberwolves to figure it out. And other than a few moments here and there, they never really did. And Ant is still trying to figure out how to pass out of double teams, how to distribute. He isn't a point guard. Usually he's getting the ball in a one-on-one situation or maybe operating in pick and roll and able to like get a split second to kind of process. That wasn't really the case. He was having to make decisions on the fly. He had, I think, 5 turnovers in this game. And I want to say like at least 3 of them were trying to get a lob to Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, Gobert only had 5 field goal attempts.
Yeah,
in this game.
I know.
A game with
in
no Towns.
32 minutes.
Yes, in
with
32
Zubac's
minutes.
Not playing the second half.
Yep. No Towns, no D'Angelo Russell, and the Wolves only were able to get Rudy the 5 shot attempts. And credit to Clippers. They're a really good defensive team. They had a really good defensive game plan, and they have some really good defensive players, but the Wolves just they weren't able to get anything going.
No, and when you're talking about Ant passing out of the double team and looking for teammates and stuff, he did a decent job of that tonight. But man, there wasn't really anyone that could hit a shot. The Wolves made 4 3-pointers in this game, 4 out of 22. And Chris Finch was talking after the game about the open looks, and he said he thought something about 17 or 18 were really good open looks from 3 of the 22, meaning there were maybe 4 or 5 that were not great. Other than that, they were all good shots that he wants this team to take. They just have to hit them. So even when Ant makes the right pass, if it's not to a D'Angelo Russell or a Karl-Anthony Towns or a Taurean Prince, who are all hurt, by the way, if those aren't the guys taking the long shot or taking the 3, they just did not have the firepower tonight.
No, and it was a combination of a good defensive game plan by the Clippers and an inability for the Wolves to get the ball into the paint to Rudy, and then, like you said, those open 3-point shots. At some point, they have to make some of those shots. And we've talked about this before, and it's just one of the more baffling things is how many guys in the Wolves are shooting below career averages on the season. And, 4 made threes on a night where the Clippers were cold from deep too, but ended up making, 14 threes for the Clippers.
Yeah.
Yep. There's really I want there to be a more clear thing to point to, but just make your open shots. It's just like when teams play zone against the Timberwolves, when the Wolves get those open shots and they miss them. This was similar to that. They were essentially playing, Clippers were essentially playing 3-on-4 because they were doubling Ant the entire game, and yet they were somehow able to both contest enough threes, or the Wolves just missed too many threes, and they were able to keep the ball from getting to Rudy Gobert. They somehow played 4 with 3 basically the entire game, and the Wolves didn't have any of their complementary players step up, and that's a much bigger conversation, I think. But given roster construction, et cetera, but the team, 2 of their top 4 players, 2 of the guys who use a lot of possessions, both of their natural point guards missing. So clearly the Wolves were starting a little bit from behind in this one, but it's just at some point, like, it comes down to just making open shots.
Sometimes it's just really simple. You don't have to dig deep and try to find this statistical anomaly that really tells the story, because the Clippers shot 38% for the game and won by 11. I mean, that just doesn't happen very often. That tells you they played good defense. And if you just do the simple math of the Wolves made 4 3-pointers, the Clippers made 10 3-pointers. Or 14, sorry, the difference is 10. So 4 for Minnesota, 14 for the Clippers. That's 10 more for LA. That's 30 points. So in an 11-point game, to get 30 more from the 3-point line, I know they shot them in great volume, but I mean, the math is pretty simple, and I don't think you have to dig any deeper than probably those. Like, just whatever team could hit a few more open shots was going to win this game tonight, and the team happened to be the Clippers, especially in the second half. Actually, it was more the bench guys. It was Nicholas Batum and Luke Kennard that started hitting. I think they combined for 29 points tonight. And those two, especially key moments in the second half, that's when LA kind of took control and finally got the Wolves at arm's length. And then just, I would say, cruised to the end, but nobody cruised at any point in this game. So I'll just say comfortably held off the Wolves until the final buzzer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, you talked about Zubac's not playing in the second half. I mean, the Clippers going small with Batum and at times Covington, they were very comfortable going small, and it worked very well against the Wolves in this game, clearly. Let's talk about our presenting sponsors of the postcast. That's our friends at Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., the U.K., Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B, or test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. In a game with no D'Lo, no Towns, no Prince, no McLaughlin, the Wolves needed other players to step up. They needed scoring, especially with Ant being double-teamed virtually every time he touched the ball. And they did not get that from really anybody else. But I thought I was most disappointed in Jalen Noel's performance off the bench. He had a really sloppy, especially in the first half. I think 3 of his 4 turnovers were early. Just not really with it, and wasn't making open shots for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. This was the perfect game for him to be able to get a little bit more run, initiate some offense. We've seen him do that. We saw him do it quite a bit actually last year when there were injuries, and Noel just didn't really bring a whole lot to the table in this game.
He didn't, and I mean, when he misses shots, it just makes all the difference in the world, because I feel like it's almost a little too predictable. Like, he's got the 3-point shot and he's got that floater. I mean, he'll attack the basket, but he'll often pull up in the lane, and he has a great floater. But I don't know if he needs to like pull out some new tricks in the bag or something like that. But in a game where there wasn't a lot of firepower, so there weren't a lot of options, even if Noel was going to pass, I feel like teams, especially when he comes in with some of those lineups where he truly is the only scorer on the court, you know what he's going to do, which is ultimately shoot it. And I don't know, he just, for some reason, it looked like kind of the same old moves, same old shots, and they didn't fall in this game. And so there was really nothing else. There wasn't another layer. There wasn't another page for him to turn. So for Jalen Noel, it's like if the shot's going in, man, he is electric. And if the shot is not going in, there's just not a whole lot you can squeeze out of that.
Yeah, and against a good defensive team like the Clippers, he is predictable, to your point. Teams know what he wants to do, and if he doesn't counter by passing maybe a little bit more or coming up with, approaching things a little bit differently, good defensive teams can make you go where they want you to. And that's what the Clippers did. I would say, similar but different for Jaden McDaniels, obviously not the offensive player that Noel is, but he's another player that the Wolves need to step up, and McDaniels was very quiet. I thought he had some good defensive moments, and actually, we could probably close the show on a little bit more of a positive note. The Clippers did only score 99 points, and yes, there was the Wolves dodged some bullets. There's no doubt about that. But I thought that the Wolves defense was actually legitimately playing well for long stretches in the first half. There was good point of attack defense from basically everyone. I think McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Austin Rivers, they all, I think, kind of took turns having these really strong possessions where they forced the Clippers into tough mid-range shots, contested threes. Wendell Moore Jr. had some good moments in one of his two stints. I thought was better than the other, but pretty good. And eventually the Clippers were just good enough and made enough threes, and the bigger issue was the Wolves offense. But I actually thought that the perimeter defense in particular was very good in the first half.
Agreed. And I thought they were flying around, they were buzzing around, and maybe part of that was because Austin Rivers was in the starting lineup for D'Angelo Russell, and Austin Rivers is a good defender, a better defender than D'Lo on most nights, but not nearly the offensive player that he is. So there's your swap out, your trade out, if you're going to go that route, which the Wolves had to do. But the energy, which has sometimes been in question for this team, was not in question at all tonight. And I agree, the buzz around factor, the fly around factor, however you want to label it, especially in the first half, you could tell it was just, they were kind of energized every time they got a miss and a rebound. After the Clippers would miss, it seemed to energize the team. They could only hold it for so long when the offense wasn't holding up as much weight or wasn't carrying as much weight. The defense kind of finally fell off when the Clippers made shots, but it was good to see, at least to know the energy and the effort and the execution was there on night number 4 or game number 4 of a 5-game road trip. This team's been on the road and been traveling, and they got one more to go before they come home. So hopefully we'll be talking about a win in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and the Wolves beat the Thunder twice earlier this season in games that felt closer than they probably should have been. I think they were kind of like 3-4 possession wins. And then they lost a couple of weeks ago in a really kind of deflating loss after the Wolves had been playing better. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is healthy. He hasn't been sitting out too many games. He's been playing outstanding. The Thunder just lost to the Heat by 2 points on Wednesday. But overall, the Thunder are only 11-17, but they play hard every night. They're basically in every game. They don't get blown out very often, and they haven't gotten blown out at all in the 3 performances against the Wolves. So this is for sure a tough matchup for Minnesota on Friday, just because of the consistency with which the Thunder bring it, and also because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really one of the better players in the league right now. So we will talk about that game after Friday's game, Friday night. A big thank you to those of you that are watching on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Of course, you can also listen after the fact on Locked On Wolves. Any of the audio feeds, you can find this show as well. A big thank you for listening and a big thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.